Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflarky's Emos here with a new deck profile. Today I am bringing my Masked Beast Trap Control deck profile. So the Masked Beast here is one of my favorite old school cards of all time. It's just an 8-star, 3,200 attack ritual with no effect, a non-effect monster. But I've always loved the artwork, really love this card, so I really love to have ways to play this deck. I've had, I've teched this card in several other decks before, Blue Eyes, things like that, just to get it to play, and always looking for ways to make new playable ways that I can at least get some wins. And this is a build that's been doing all right for me, pretty well. Very trap control variant, and it's more focused on the mass beasts and level 8 fiends in general, as opposed to just being an extra card I throw in to clog up an otherwise better Blue Eyes deck. So with that said, let's get into the cards. Starting off with our monsters, I'm playing 2 copies of the Mass Beast. This is namesake of the deck, 3,200 attack, non-effect monster, which is pretty cool. 8-star fiend. It's a ritual monster, so it has to be ritual summoned. That's pretty much the basis of it. The level 8 fiend comes in handy because we're going to make use of that with the spirit, with the dark spirit cards, and just kind of summon this guy and then recur him as much as possible. Next, I'm playing up 3 copies of Archfiend Emperor, the First Lord of Horror. This is a pretty cool card. 8-star Dark Fiend monster. The 8 stars is nice because that means this one card can be the entire ritual tribute for the Mass Beast. But also, Archfiend, the First Lord of Horror is a 3,000 attack monster that can also be used with our Dark Spirit cards that we play, which is pretty nice. And the nice thing about Archfiend Emperor is that it's a 3,000 attack monster that we can just normal summon. Now it does half its attack and die at the end of the turn, but that's alright. It getting in the grave means it is there to facilitate our Dark Spirit cards, and that's why we run it in the deck. So next up, the way that makes this deck work, I am playing 2 copies of Dark Spirit of Malice and 2 copies of Dark Spirit of Banishment. So what these cards are, these are the Dark Spirit cards, and the Dark Spirits are a bunch of cards that came out with the Necrofear support, and they create a little resource recursion loop for specifically level 8 Dark Fiends, which is pretty cool because that works with both Archfiend and the Mass Beast. So Dark Spirit of Malice here, of course, is just one that says while your opponent activates a card effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to special summon a level 8 Fiend monster in your graveyard, and its effects are negated, which is not a big deal because neither of these two have effects that benefit them. I guess Archfiend Emperor technically has a way to, banish Archfiends to pop a card, but mostly we just want them for the very large attack powers that they're going to have, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, if a level 8 Fiend monster is sent to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can add this card to your hand. So you basically use this card to get your Mass Beast back on the field, and then when Mass Beast gets removed off the field for any reason, Dark Spirit goes back in your hand, allowing you to summon it to harass your opponent, and as soon as they play a card, you can tribute it off to get your 3,200 attack Mass Beast back again. And that makes it pretty cool. Dark Spirit of Banishment is a little bit different. It basically is when your opponent's monster declares an attack. At the start of the damage step, you send this card from your field to the graveyard to summon a level 8 Fiend from your grave and change the attack target to it. The monster you summon, of course, its effects are negated, and like Dark Spirit of Malice, when your Fiend hits the grave, you can add this card back to your hand. So it's pretty cool. Having 2 of those means that, we'll always have 1 if our opponent called by the graves 1, just ways to get them out. But 3 is, too many. So, yeah, you can use this card for both Mass Beast and Archfiend Emperor. And last, kind of filling up 2 monster slots, I am playing 2 copies of Witch of the Black Forest. This is mostly just here to, supplement my monsters, and mainly this card can search any of the Dark Spirits. I really want the Dark Spirits to get this thing going. So Witch of the Black Forest can contribute to that, because Witch of the Black Forest is simply a card that says when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a monster with 1,500 or less defense from the deck to your hand, as long as you don't use it the turn you add it, which is fine. We can wait a turn, but it's very nice because if we don't get to our Dark Spirit, we can use Witch of the Black Forest to get to it. We could side out one of these, or maybe one of the Dark Spirit of Banishments for a copy of the Archfiend Eris that, when it gets destroyed, could search an Archfiend card if we want to search for the Archfiend Emperor, but I figure playing 3 of them is sort of enough. We have a lot of draw power in this deck, easy ways to get to it, so even if we don't have it over a turn, we can get it soon. And that is it for the monster cards. Next, going into our spell cards, I am playing 2 copies of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. Very interesting field spell to include in this deck. This makes all non-effect monsters unaffected by monster effect. Now, the Mass Beast does count as a non-effect monster, which is pretty cool. Uh, gives it invulnerability. And then mostly for the second effect, once per turn, if your opponent special summons a monster, an effect monster, while you control a non-effect or face-down monster, you can draw 2 cards. Now, if it was only non-effect monster, this card probably wouldn't be worth running because then it would only be active when the Mass Beast is online, which sometimes takes a little longer than expected. But because of that second effect with a face-down monster, this is still a good card to have because, say, if we have our Witch of the Black Forest and need to set it and search a card, we can set Witch of the Black Forest. So our opponent doesn't know what it is and attacks into it, but also it being set means that we can draw 2 cards off of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. That can also be done with any of the Dark Spirits if they're in our opening hand and we don't have a way to get to the big fiend yet. Just to draw 2 cards, and of course the Dark Spirits in the grave is not that bad because we can get them back. Next, I'm playing a copy of Fury of Kari-Shin. This is a searcher for Torrential Tribute. In a trap control deck like this, I love Torrential Tribute, and a card that searches it is great. That's why we play it. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. This is for consistency, and of course there's a lot of times that we won't necessarily be special summoning on our turn, given that this is a slower stun-style trap control deck. Pot of Duality just looks at the top 3 cards of our deck, adds 1 to our hand, and shuffles the rest back in. In exchange, we can't special summon, and that's worth, because there are important cards we want to see that will win us the game. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Extra deck is not very useful in this. We're not doing a bunch of XCs. We're mostly just looking to set on big bunguses that can't be removed with ease and, play some powerful trap stuff to knock our opponent out of the game. So we're going to turn 6 random extra deck cards into a draw 2, which is pretty sick. And of course, last, I'm playing 1 copy of Card of Demise. Pretty good one of to have for when we've already set up and we want to reload with trap cards. Card of Demise simply draws until we have 3 cards in our hand. Our opponent doesn't take any damage for the rest of the turn after this card is activated. At the end of our turn, we got to send everything in our hand to the graveyard, which isn't a big deal because most things are traps. And we can't special summon on the same turn. So not bad if we've already played Pot of Duality, but there'll be times where we don't need to special summon on our own turn. And if we lose monsters to the grave, it's not really a big deal because our Dark Spirits come back, and the big fiends we want in the grave. So really like this card just to reload on trap cards, keep us secured. And that is it for the spells. Next, moving on to the trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Renewal of the World. That's right, we got through the spell sections and you didn't see a ritual spell, so you were probably wondering how I got out the Mass Beast, and the way I've chosen to is actually through this trap card, which I find interesting. This is a continuous trap that when this card is activated, you can banish a ritual monster from your deck, and of course, then on your next turn, you're going to be able to send this card to the graveyard to activate either one of its 2 effects. You either add that ritual monster to your hand, which is something we don't usually do, but we're usually looking to do this first effect. Tribute a monster from your hand and or field, or shuffle 1 ritual monster from your graveyard into the deck whose level is equal or exceeds the level of the monster banished by this card's effect, and ritual summon it. So this gives us a way to easily tutor Mass Beast out of the deck on our opponent's turn, and then on our follow-up turn we can summon it out. Now of course the target that we usually want to tribute is Archfiend Emperor, unless of course we have another Mass Beast in our hand or even in the graveyard with this effect. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, I decided to go with this over the spell card because it clogs up less deck space. It works with the trap card style, and of course, Mass Beast is just kind of an accessory to this deck. It's not really needed since we have Archfiend of Emperor, but of course, the whole reason I built this was to play the Mass Beast, so I figured I'd include it. And so, Renewal of the World does a solid job. Next, the deck's big win con. 3 skill drain. Listen, Mass Beast is a non-effect monster. Archfiend Emperor loves having its effect negated, so I can normal summon a 3000 attack beater, even though it does still die, because that's the condition of summoning it, not an effect on the field. So skill drain wins us the game here. We pay 1000 life points, negate the effects of all monsters while they're face up on the field. With monster effects gone, 3200 attack is very big, and that's going to do a lot of damage. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Summon Limit. Summon Limit is another really good floodgate that just says neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. That's definitely something we won't be doing often in this deck, is summoning more than twice per turn. And being able to hose out combo decks with this is very good. I really like this card too because, as I mentioned, we're playing Torrential Tribute, and you can do some cheeky combos with Summon Limit and Torrential Tribute where they summon 2 monsters, you Torrential, and then you chain Summon Limit so that their board is wiped and opened, which is a lot more threatening when you have 3000 attack monsters to do damage. So just a pretty good floodgate to include in the deck. And a deck that's weak like this needs floodgates in order to win. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute's a great trap card when a monster is summoned, or you can, wipe the board, destroy all monsters on the field. Not a big deal, because if we destroy our big own Archfiends, we'll be able to get our Dark Spirits back, and then our Dark Spirits, of course, we'll summon them again, and if our opponent doesn't play into our Dark Spirits, well, you can summon the Dark Spirits and poke them, kind of forcing them to have to play into it, which is pretty cool. And the Torrential Summon Limit combo is very good. Very disruptive card. Just a good tool to have. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgments. We got floodgates that are win cons. Our opponents are going to want to remove those with cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, stuff like that. We want to make sure that we can say no to the answers. So you play your Solemns carefully to save your win cons, and your opponent's not going to be able to do anything about it. This card pays half our life to negate a summon or a spell or trap card activation and negate and destroy the card, which is pretty cool. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Lost Wind. Solemn Strike was a bit tempting for this deck, but I already feel like I'm paying a lot of life points in a lot of ways. And I like Lost Wind quite a bit. We target a face-up special summon monster on the field, negate its effects, and then, of course, half its attack, which is pretty cool. And then this card has recursion, that if this card's in our graveyard and our opponent special summons from the extra deck, we can set this card again, but banish it when it leaves the field. So I like that recursion. It makes it pretty useful. And I like specifically the ability to negate the effect of extra deck, extra deck special summon monsters, because it's a good way to protect summon limit. If we don't have skill drain and we have summon limit, maybe they can go into a Nightmare Phoenix, try to pop summon limit and go off. Well, if they try that, we can Lost Wind to negate them popping summon limit, and something like that, so that they're stuck on Nightmare Phoenix and then have to pass their turn. And that's just very nice. So I like Lost Wind. You could play Solemn Strike if you want. And of course, the last card I'm playing for the traps, there are 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. This card is a pick for me because I play, when I play casually in my duel group, which is the environment where I play this kind of deck. Definitely a lot more back row themed decks and just slower decks in general that will use spell and traps, and Heavy Storm Duster is a pretty good card. Target up to 2 spells and traps and destroy them, but we can't conduct our battle phase this turn. So that trade-off is usually not much of a trade-off because we're playing it during our opponent's end phase anyway, take care of some set cards. But it's really nice. If you're playing against people who don't really have back row or anything, you can side this out for any other trap card that you may find useful. And that is it for the main deck. So, not much to talk about the extra deck with this deck. You're not going to really go into anything. You can make some rank 8 XZs, you can make some Link 2s, you may be able to make some level 3 XZs with the Dark Spirit, but none of it that I ever find myself ever realistically going into, so I'm just going to leave that up to you. Just make sure you have 15 extra deck cards, because you mostly need that extravagance fodder, and that's good enough. But that leaves it be for my Mass Beast deck profile. So let me know what you think. Big fan of this card, and I like this card deck because it really gets the Mass Beast out, and it makes him kind of the center point of the deck, and the trap cards just allow it so that I can actually win with such a strategy. So very cool, very glad to have this deck in my repertoire. So thanks everyone for checking out the video. I'll catch y'all in the next one.